Money FM 89.3, best of weekends.
The Happiness Conference 2020 is a social enterprise translating the science of happiness and well-being into actions that people can take. It is going to be happening this month. And very happy to have on the organizer and one of the people that's going to be taking part in it, Sherman Ho, the co-founder of the Happiness Initiative, and Marc Van Huizen, founder of Pique Performance. Gentlemen, welcome to Weekend Mornings, Money FM. Make us happy today, will you please? We need it.
Yeah, I think given all the stress people are facing now with the elections, I think we could do it with a little bit of happiness, right?
Indeed. We all need something good to think about, something positive to think about. Sherman, let's start with you. Talk to us about the conference that's coming up, Happiness Conference 2020.
So this conference is organized by us. We are a social enterprise called Happiness Initiative, where we try to take the science and research behind happiness and well-being and to see and to translate them into actions that people can take. Because a lot of times in Singapore, actually, we are very pragmatic people, right? You know, when you talk about happiness, you think it's this fluffy, abstract thing, and you don't make time for it. So, but there's actually a lot of research that goes into this field, and we wanted to help people understand this. Also, this conference was really a platform for us to try to enable that, to get speakers to come to share about all these techniques, these tips, some of these applications they can use to improve their well-being.
I think we all need a little bit of it. How will the conference, usually it's been in person over the last few years, now it's going to be virtual this year. How is it actually going to look to people that want to take part in it?
Yeah, so it has been a very, very stressful few months because this conference was originally supposed to happen in March. So it was supposed to be a physical conference. And then, as everybody knows now, COVID happened, and then we had to postpone everything. And then there was whole mad rush to convert it online. So now what we're going to do, it instead of a 2-day event in March, we now have it over a month, where every week we have a panel discussion. And then at the end of it all, we have a 2-day session where we have online webinars for people to participate in. And one of the speakers we managed to get is Angela Duckworth, who's a very famous TEDx speaker and also the author of Greed, who talks a lot about how to passion and perseverance.
Question for you here. I've lived in Singapore since 1996, and I've written books and columns, often mocking Singapore's unbelievable obsession with happiness. Every year we get the happiness index and we're at the bottom or near the bottom, and then we get the postmortems and the hand wringing. Why are we so miserable? Why are we so unhappy? And it goes on for days and weeks, and the Straits Times do spreads on it every year. You can set your watch by this. Honestly. Marc, why in Singapore are we so obsessed with happiness? Or the lack of?
Yeah, I think that's always like the Singaporean dream, and you're always thinking about what we can get next. And I really love this article that Richard Brooks wrote in The Atlantic, and he gave us 3 equations to happiness, and I really like the third equation of happiness, and that is satisfaction equals what you have divided by what you want. And I think Singaporeans keep figuring out the numerator, what we have, and we try to increase that amount, whether it's more money, a better paying job, a wonderful relationship. But we forget about the denominator, about what is it that we'll be satisfied with. So I think that gave us like some good insight into what Singaporeans can think about when it comes to satisfaction or well-being in that sense.
And Sherman, what do you think on this as a Singaporean? You know, is it that this idea that maybe kiasuism and happiness are somehow, you know, they just don't go together? You know, they're uneasy bedfellows. The obsession with money, career, the 5 C's or whatever the latest status symbol is versus happiness. What is it about Singapore and Singaporeans, do you think, makes it such an uneasy bedfellow?
Yeah, I think Singaporeans generally we are very stressed out because I think there are many factors like the high cost of living, the very fast pace of living in Singapore, and you know, you grow up in a system, in an educational system where there's very high stake exams, and then you sort of, as you grow up, you are always pressured to that you need to keep doing better and better and better. And I don't think that Singapore is an unhappy country per se.
Correct.
I think it's more so that there is more that we can do to be happy. Because if you look at, if you go back to the surveys that all these news organizations always bring out, like the World Happiness Report and all, Singapore is actually ranked decently high. We are 30-something in around the world, right? We are ranked 30-something, right? But one interesting fact that we always try to look at is that of all the indicators that they use to sort of measure what contributes to this ranking, right? Singapore ranks top in like many areas. For example, GDP, we rank highest in healthcare, we rank highest in our trust in government institutions. Yeah, but there are certain areas that we are very, very far back on. One thing is the social support, and another thing is also generosity. Right, and I think maybe that's partly due to the way Singapore is. Like, we are a very small island, and it's always about survival. Yeah. So we always try to and there's this whole narrative about we need to survive. So it's always all about protecting ourselves. Yeah. So I think that's what we want to do. We are not trying to say that Singaporeans this wholly unhappy bunch and miserable. I think that Singaporeans generally are okay, but we can do more to help improve this well-being.
I think you make a great point there, Sherman, actually, because, look, I grew up in England. We are the grumpiest people on earth. When it comes to miserable people, you'll go a long way to beat the English. The whole thing, mustn't grumble. We do nothing but grumble in England. It's a national pastime.
It's the good food and the good weather that just makes you so
weather,
cheery.
Terrible weather, terrible food. We just grumble. However, on your point, the Brits also, in fairness, to be balanced, has a reputation for generosity, social welfare, compassion, helping the less fortunate, safety nets, and so on. So what are some of the things you'll be talking about at this conference that maybe tackle that dichotomy? Because I think you're right. I think you make a good point. It's nurtured in Singaporeans from a young age. Survival, no natural resources. We can all parrot this over and over again. Kill your neighbour before your neighbour kills you. This kind of survivalist, Darwinist mentality. That's not a literal metaphor, people.
I was going to say, life is tough up in Sengkang, isn't it?
Yeah. We kill each other in Sengkang. Yeah, we kill each other in Sengkang. I'm on the run for 10 murders. No. Let's keep it on happiness. So what are some of the things at your conference they're going to... maybe Mark can take this one. Some of the things at your conference that you're going to talk about, they're going to deal with this dichotomy. How do we make Singaporeans happier?
Yeah, and I think, Sherman would probably know one of the panel discussions. I think he's going to talk about the community as well as well-being in youth. The panel discussion that I'll be moderating will be on well-being at work, the secret ingredient to thriving organizations. So I believe, developing compassion even within organizations would be a useful tool. And a recent McKinsey article was talking about how leaders should develop themselves to be more compassionate leaders. And I think even compassion amongst your colleagues, understanding and developing that sort of empathy about the difficulties that each of them go through in their work at home. Now we're all working from home. We all have different contexts with which we're going through for all our workplace conferences and Zoom calls with kids shouting in the background, pets running all over the place. So developing compassion and being a compassionate leader would be important.
Yeah, we're talking with Marc Van Huizen, the founder of Pique Performance, and Sherman Ho, the co-founder of the Happiness Initiative. And Marc, you said something that's very interesting, which is, that we're in a very different space in terms of our colleagues, our coworkers, the teams that we're running. Some, of course, are going back to the office environment. Many have said that they are never going back to the office environment. How do we manage that health, mental well-being, happiness among teams that are now going to find themselves not sitting next to each other either all of the time or maybe 50% of the time, if at all?
Yeah, and I think the greatest predictor of well-being has been found to be relationships. So it's still finding that way to connect, even in your remote teams, whether you just have a connection or like a check-in 5 minutes before you start your actual meeting, just asking, how's everyone doing? Or like, what's been the best part of today for you? Just checking and finding out how people are doing outside of the work context makes people feel like you're genuinely caring for their well-being. So I think that's one of the things to still keep
and also
connected to. Things that they could do would also be like running your virtual well-being events. It's still like traveling around the world, even though you're on a Zoom call and having an amazing race.
And Sherman, as Glenn mentioned, we're mostly working from home. But is there anything in the conference or something you're talking about how maybe we need to change workplace culture generally? I'll give you a very good example. A friend of mine who ran a company in Singapore, he was the boss. The staff would not go home until he went home. And this was something he would never stipulate. He just said it was a very Asian thing. Nobody wanted to be seen to go home before the boss. They had no work to do. They had done their work. but they would not go home before the boss left the building. So he would have to leave earlier and earlier and earlier just to make his staff go home. He would order them to go home, but no one wanted to be the first person to be seen to go home. And they were all miserable about this. Nobody was happy. So is there something we need to do within the workplace to change that culture, Sherman?
Yes. Thanks for asking this question because this is an experience I myself went through, because I used to work in a very traditional Asian company before, and I was handling in a different time zone. I was working in the Africa region, right? So in my work, I had to work at night for sure, because that's the Africa time zone, right? And I realized this very interesting thing when I left, right? When I did my exit interview with the company, I asked the HR manager, I said that, one of the reasons I wanted to leave was that I didn't understand why is it that I'm expected to work at night, but I have to come to office at 9 a.m. every single day. Right? It didn't make sense. And then her response was a little bit shocking, because she told me that, I don't understand what is it with you young people and work-life balance nowadays. When we were younger, we really worked out. We really worked hard and we never complain. So I think to change this culture is not something that can be done overnight. There's a lot of very deeply held beliefs that managers and people that have been in the company for a very long time have in terms of how the way work should be done, right? And this culture sometimes permeates the entire organization, right? So one of the best ways that I do feel that is very important is really training your middle managers, because at the end of the day, your top management usually can be very enlightened. They can think that, it's more about the work. Doesn't matter how long you work, it's about the scope. But at the end of the day, the middle managers are the ones that has to be trained in a lot of being aware of a lot of these things, helping them understand that, how to deal with people, how to empathize with people, how to understand that people also have their personal lives and the way people work. And a lot of time, these things are lacking because middle managers, sometimes they're promoted not based on the ability to lead a team, but they're promoted based on technical capability. Like, I'm very good at doing the job that I do, and now I'm put in charge of a team because I'm good at the job I do. But that doesn't mean that I have the capabilities to manage that team well. And often that's why there's a lot of issues and conflicts and all these issues happen, and people get very unhappy with their jobs.
Sherman, how can folks take part in the Happiness Conference? What do they need to do?
No, they just have to go to the website, happinessconference.asia, and basically the links to the RSVP are all there. And the event is completely free, so everything is virtual and they're all completely free. So you can just sign up for everything and bring all your friends and enjoy all the sessions together. There are a total of 12 events that will happen.
And it's happening from the 12th, right? It's happening from next Thursday?
November.
Yep, until
Next
the 6th
Thursday.
of December, right?
Until the 6th of December.
Awesome.
Perfect. So get online and get happy.
Absolutely. Sherman Ho, co-founder of the Happiness Initiative, and Marc Van Huizen, founder of Pique Performance. Thanks to you both for being with us today on Money FM. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us here.
Thank